The year was 1957 when telemarketing first started. Can you believe it? 1957. The first call center is actually attributed to a company named Dial America, which the call center only had actually two working calling stations. One was for inbound and one was for outbound, something similar to what we do today, but on a much, much smaller scale. And sales has only really grown from there. It's crazy to think that it went back that far. But the world of sales has changed so significantly since the late 50s to today, even especially in the last 5 years, and how we sell and how people buy has changed significantly. And that's going to be the topic for today. Today, Matthew and I were joined by David Yockelson, who is the distinguished VP and Gartner Fellow at Gartner. He has over 30 years of experience in the B2B information technology space. He's been in executive, management, partner roles focusing on incorporated product, technical marketing, corporate development, strategy, field enablement, product evangelism. I mean, everything.
It sounds like he's really done it all at this point, and we're going to get into that on the show.
He absolutely has, and it definitely showed when we were in conversation with him because he lent a really, I think, very interesting way of looking at how people buy and what we need to change how we sell in general. I definitely learned a lot. I don't know about you, Matthew.
Value selling is the heart of everything we talked about today. And listen in if you're an SE who wants to work more closely with your product marketing team, hear about demos, and hear about how to buy a backpack.
We were going to talk, I should say, about value realization, which is, believe it or not, David's focus, which is more of the idea of getting someone to the point where they're getting value out of your product as the stopping point for sales, rather than the stopping point of sales being when they purchase something, which I think is a fascinating topic. But to hear more about that, you have to actually go follow David on LinkedIn because he posts about that all the time. We may have to have him back on the show to talk about this because we talked a lot more today about changing from a feature to a value-based approach, how you do initial research on someone, how you show up to those first meetings with the information, about how you can't waste anyone's time anymore. All very great takeaways for all of us sellers, but less on value realization than I thought we were even going to get to today.
I was captivated by that idea of how consumer buying culture has now made its way into B2B. We need to meet people where they are and make sure that they're getting value out of the things we're selling them. So shall we hop in, Jack?
Let's do it.
After the break.
Today's episode is brought to you by the PreSales Collective Enablement Programs. Did you know that at the PreSales Collective, we have enablement programs for you and for your teams? Whether it's looking at the foundations of pre-sales, understanding how to better provide strategic value, or do better discovery, all the programs are available for you that you can sign up for today. To go and see our latest or most up-to-date courses, go to presalescollective.com/our-courses, and you'll see the calendar of our upcoming classes that you can register for. The next one coming up in March is Discovery Pillars. This is a 3-week virtual program designed to equip you or your teams with the competencies and knowledge to uncover customer needs and craft compelling stories. Make sure you check it out and sign up today.
David, so good to have you with us. Welcome to the show.
Appreciate it.
Today, we're talking all about getting to value realization, and I couldn't be more excited. I had a chance to meet David, I think, late last year, I think was when we've connected. And we talked about the show, talked about ideas. And given your background, over 30 years of experience in B2B information technology, spanning multiple areas, including multiple go-to-market functions, especially with your role at Gartner, I feel like you've got a better perspective on the evolving sales role than almost anyone else that I've talked to so far. So let's talk a bit about that. What's different about tech and B2B buyers today versus how things maybe even were a few years, maybe even 10 years ago? And how's that impacting our roles within sales?
Thanks for making me feel as old as I am. I got to change that bio one of these days. But so tech is a fun place. If you go back decades, even if you go back 5 years ago, not so long ago, the issue in tech is the technology itself. Tech companies are typically run by very smart people. Often, smaller companies are run by their founders who tend to be engineers or developers. And as a result of that, they lead with their technology. And then that often follows through and has often followed through to sales, in spite of the fact that we have value selling methodology, and we have Sandler, and we have medic and medpick ways of qualifying and sales methodologies, all of which Challenger, has a value component. Despite all of that, traditionally tech sellers have focused on feeds and speeds and features and functions and our whiz bang thing and all of that. Whereas we on the marketing side of the fence, and my background as a practitioner has been mostly as a product marketer. As such, I've worked with salespeople and sales engineers forever. But our view of the world is you've got to lead with the value of what you're offering, and you've got to lead with why is that going to fix whatever challenge, pain point, need that your customers have. So there's always been that kind of angst, let's say. But what's happened in the last, I would say, 6-ish years is that who is buying technology has diversified. So it's not just IT departments, it's business units, it's functions, and so on. So the buying universe has expanded, and those buyers are not as good at buying technology as their technology counterparts in IT have been. So that's one thing. Those buyers care less about the tech than solving their problem. So they're more anxious to hear about how are you going to deliver this value for me differently, better, faster, cheaper than the other one is. And at the same time, they're more tech savvy. They want to see and hear how this thing that you're offering to sell to me, whether it suits my purpose, whether it suits what I'm trying to get done, and how it's going to do that better. So the emphasis and the control has passed over to the buyer. I like saying that, you no longer have a sales process. It's a buying process. You don't have control. The buyers have control, and they bounce all over the place and repeat things and so on. And so that's created issues for tech sellers.
That buying process, I've seen that analogy, and I think it's very apt, focusing more on the buying process. Has that process changed much over the past as well? Is that part of what's fueling this change?
Absolutely. So you could think about in the past when you had a simpler set of buyers and very technology-focused buyers, it was much more linear. We have a thing we need. We're going to see the vendors that offer that, and we're going to pick one through whatever process, and step, step, step. Now it is more like spaghetti. The process is convoluted because you have, and particularly in B2B tech, you've got buying teams, and the bigger the deal and the bigger the company, the larger the buying team. So let's say on average, you have a buying team that has 10 critters in it, and those critters have different levels of influence over the purchase. Well, they all do things. They all repeat things. They also have day jobs, so they're not only focusing on you. They also don't want to talk to you as a seller, at least not right away. That's another little issue. So they want to do their own research, and they do it. Eventually, they'll want to talk to you, but they want to talk to you on their terms. And you're not sure exactly when that's going to happen. You're not sure how many demos you're going to have to give, all this kind of stuff. So to say it's convoluted is probably an understatement.
Yeah, I found that the day job thing is so true. And actually, this is the power of champions, right? You probably have someone who maybe is actually excited to talk to you. Maybe you've got a part of the business unit that sees the value or is at least excited about what you're bringing to the table, and they're excited. Maybe they get their boss excited too. So that's great. But then you're right. All of those other people, you said 10, you've got 2 out of 10. What about those 8 other people that this only impacts their job 5%, 2%. It's a tiny part of their day. They're not paid to sit there and think about your product. They're there to represent risk or represent procurement or compliance or legal or whatever it is. And managing to navigate that is so challenging. So, David, in the world of spaghetti, who wins? It's not just the best product, is it anymore?
The sauce wins, I guess. And what is the sauce? Best product, you could define that a lot of different ways, but if I were a marketer, which I am, I would say the company that best expresses the value of what they're offering, whether it's going to drive the outcome that you want, is going to win. And as a marketer, I would say that good marketing always beats good product, almost all the time. Some exceptions to that. So I think the company, the vendor, the team that is able to outfit that champion and placate the buying team easily in the way that they want to be dealt with in the most effective way is the winner. And part of that, I should relate it to this. You mentioned risk and procurement and so on. So yeah, in that buying team are finance people and procurement people. And just to go back to Jack's question for a second, another thing that's changed is that deals are under a lot more scrutiny than they used to be. And there's a finance person entity that's part of pretty much every deal. I mean, not the lowest, individual seat purchase deal, but anything 10,000 and over, you're going to have to build a business case for it. So the winner is going to be that vendor and team that help the champion sell internally to that buying team when the vendor isn't there, and helps that company build and defend its business case for that purchase. Why is it going to accomplish what they want? And why is it better than spending the money on that fleet of cars or, whatever it is?
Yeah. There's a couple things that I think are golden here that I want to make sure we spend the time digging into more. You talked even before about that buying teams care less about the tech anymore than they used to, which is actually very interesting when you think about the fact that a lot of us think, well, we're selling the tech. But buying teams, I think you're right, care less about the tech. It's about who can express the value the best, is the phrase that you gave, which I think is very appropriate. If we dig into that, we dig into the fact that, as you said, it's whoever can help them to understand how to spend their money the best is going to be who ends up winning. How do you stop talking about your tech, though, as a seller? How do you stop talking about yourself? Because that's what we're trained to do. And if we completely stop doing that, though, how do we then differentiate ourselves? Is it just on this value piece, or where does that live?
Valid point. I mean, we're all in tech, and at some point, you've got to talk about the gizmos and the gears and all that sort of stuff. And parenthetically, what podcast or conversation would be anything without saying AI? AI and Gen AI have a role in shifting that some, but we'll talk about that now. I'm sure we'll touch on it. I think the trick is you've got to, and everybody's seen Wolf of Wall Street. I'm sure by now it's to sell me this pen thing. And it's not about selling the feature of the pen. It's about selling what the pen's going to do. So you start with the outcome you're going to drive. At some point, and let's call it mid-ish funnel, or somewhere between the top of the funnel and the middle of the funnel in traditional marketing funnel terms, you're going to have to differentiate what you offer. And the way that you express your differentiation and the way that you express differentiated value becomes why your tech does this better than the other guy's tech. So absolutely. And it's kind of funny, we're saying, avoid the tech. You're right. You can't, and you must not entirely avoid it. If anything, our sellers have to be more technically oriented than they have been. And different categories of product carry different technical needs for expertise, but they have to know it, but you have to apply it when it makes sense. And typically that's not the first salvo, unless you've invented the most wonderful, novel, innovative, better mousetrap that is so obvious. Hello, Chat GPT, but everybody can't have that.
Yeah,
which is funny because I feel like everyone thinks they have that, though, right? That's the problem.
Oh, yeah.
If you ask 9 out of 10 sellers, they're going to say, we are that. I agree with you, but I think that's a bit of a warning. Maybe you have to put a caveat in that of how to truly maybe evaluate if you are that and why you're likely not.
So I have a question on that, because I've worked at small organizations for my solutions engineering career. So I started at a company of about 150. I'm at a company about 100 now. I've definitely been in this world of startups where people think that they have that next cool piece of technology, and it really is easy to focus on the tech. But David and Jack, you've also worked at larger organizations. Does that same attitude permeate even once you're thousands of employees? Can you really still be saying, we've got the technology that's so good it should sell itself?
Unfortunately, yeah. So having lived this in both large and small companies, the large company example I have, a 3-letter acronym, but I worked for IBM. So I think everybody has worked for IBM at some point. Fantastic learning ground, and now doing much better than it used to, whatever. But I can tell you that in so many areas of technology across the portfolio, leading with the tech was the thing.
So they would go like, oh, we've got the best mainframe. Our mainframe is so much better.
I lived in business process, what we used to call workflow, what now I guess we call automation or whatever. And we had internally 2 competing factions with similar products. And it's exactly what they did. It's like, we have the best rules engine, and how are you ever going to prove? I mean, it's so tough to prove that. Meanwhile, we're talking to financial services company X, and they're like, we need to adjudicate our loan more effectively, or whatever the process is. And we're talking with business buyers and IT buyers, but you're trying to solve a business problem first. And I think for most categories of technology, when you realize that you have to be in the context of the business problem and how you're going to arrive at the solution to that. And then say, by the way, we do that better than X because our rules engine is easily malleable and changeable. And we have Gen AI to do, that kind of stuff.
Not to belabor the point, but I think you're spot on. When has a company ever tried to approach you to buy your software and said, we're looking to purchase the best software on the market? That's just not how buyers think. That's not how I think in my personal life. I recently bought a backpack. I didn't Google, I want to buy the best backpack. I'm like, I know what I need. I'm traveling a couple of times a week or a month, and I want something that's able to fit my laptop and fit 2 days of clothing. And so those are the things that I'm looking for, just in the same way that buyers are looking to solve a problem.
Although now I'm going to contradict that a little bit. Having said all that, I'm going to give you a quick example. So we may touch on interactive demonstration tech at some point in this discussion. So that's an area that I look at fervently. It's an area where now people know about the technology. So it's I want one. So I do get the question, hey, I need interactive demo. But my immediate next question is, what do you want to do with it? Are you trying to do live sales things? Are you trying to do something on your website? So if they don't know better than to not lead with that, you have to direct them to what are they trying to accomplish and then back into it.
Hype cycles will get you a short-term sale, but they're not going to get you that long-term value.
Hype cycle creator, I don't disagree.
I mean, it's definitely something that we're all experiencing right now with, I think the latest hype cycle is what I think most of our companies at some point have tried to push. And there's a lot of value in that generating a lead. But I think we've all experienced such a big gap between that lead that comes in because of a marketing piece they've seen to getting them even to understand why the heck they should have the next conversation. I remember having a conversation with someone who was like, all right, I saw your marketing piece, et cetera, and realized they actually had no need for anything we provided. Just the idea sounded good, but it was completely off from the actual value they were going to get out of it.
I think, related to this is the aspect that not every company buys technology for the same reason. And companies have personalities, let's say, and those personalities dictate whether they purchase technology because they want to be innovative, because they want to be first, or because they have competitive pressure, or they really don't want to buy it, but they want more productivity, or they just don't care. The reason this is important is it dictates how, as a seller, you need to talk to them, how you're going to approach them. So you can't approach every company or every vertical market the same way with your stuff because they all don't care the same way.
So I, as an enterprise seller focusing on financial services, have come to think of a sale process as the interface of two organizations. Just like you said, they have personalities. My company has a personality, and hopefully my buyer has a personality too. And me and my enterprise team, usually it's SE, AE taking the leads, right? Or probably AE, SE. And we're trying to form that connection, but then we have to represent that entire organization along with its personality. How do you get started on shifting from technology to value? Because you're just one point in between these two giant organizations, right? How do you start?
This is where I like being a marketer, a product marketer, because the onus falls on us to help figure out what's the personality and what are the buyer personas and how do they act. So the very first step is you've got to figure out what's driving that company to do something. So I would call those the value drivers that a particular sector or organization has. And you can look at that vertically. So financial services companies want to, I'm going to make it up a little bit, but they want more customers. They want to retain their customers. They want to sell more mortgage products or create more bank accounts, whatever the things are. And those things end up driving revenue, or they save cost, or they reduce risk, or all of those things. So if you can identify the value drivers writ large that those entities have, and then you can say, okay, knowing that and knowing the use cases that they want to fulfill, now I can start to think about, well, who are the buyers going to be for this? What are the buyer personas? And what are they going to tell me? And what can I know about them in terms of what they value? How do they make decisions about products like this? What are their priorities? What are the problems they're trying to solve? Are there reasons why they would or wouldn't buy this thing from me? specifically. They think I'm too expensive. They don't trust me, whatever. And so there are characteristics like that. And I'm being a little formulaic because there's a methodology that I like around it. Anyway, it starts with this fairly deep insight into who your buyers are and why and how they make decisions. That absolutely is a starting point for that.
So once you got your buyers, I love that as a start. I feel like I've definitely seen that idea before. And historically, how I've seen it, which I don't think works too well, is I have my buyers. Therefore, it gives me then a list of questions to ask them, which will lead us down a very pre-described path. I don't feel like that's what you're getting at. What's the next step once you've got this idea of who your buyer is?
I skipped over a lot of ground in the derivation of all the stuff. So if you know the markets, the use cases, the buyer personas, and so on, part of what you're hearing from those buyer personas, if you're doing the work the right way, or now, these days with Gen AI, I can kind of get answers more quickly than I used to with less ergs expended. But part of the answers that I get are going to be the key themes behind what they're trying to accomplish. So if you do this right, things will start repeating themselves in terms of how they make decisions, in terms of the priorities they have, and so on. That is going to get you in the door, puts you in the ballpark of, I know that this type of company is trying to solve this type of problem, and we ostensibly have something that fits those needs. Then, the next step is now I've got to defend that, or I have to go on the offense and say, my thing to deliver what you're trying to accomplish is better and different because. And then we get into the world of how we articulate that value to your champion, to your buying team. And that partly means showing them. So here's my product and here's what it does. And part of it is telling them, helping them build a business case. And then we get to the middle of the process, which I won't go into, but yeah, those are kind of the next steps.
If I'm hearing it right, you get the opportunity to showcase that value because you've done the upfront work to understand the business, the industry, and that's the buy-in. From the buyer's perspective, that's almost the starting point, is if you haven't taken the time at some level to understand what it is I'm going to care about, it'd be like Matthew having someone tell him, here's the best backpack for you, without ever having done the research about what type of backpack Matthew needs.
Yeah.
Bingo.
They're going to recommend me 20-liter commuter backpack, which is not right for me. Right for my new coworker, Alex, who was rocking it the other day. He commutes to Jersey and he puts his laptop in there, lunch. That's perfect for your everyday carry, but that's not what I'm looking for.
Is he single strap or double strap?
He's double strap. Single strap. Oh, single strap in 2025. My back can't handle that.
Yeah, we could go on a whole backpack discussion. I think everyone listening probably has something to weigh in on. What's your favorite backpack? Let us know in the comments. But I love this concept because it is definitely something I've seen as a different buyer persona. You can no longer walk in and waste time explaining your business. You don't have time anymore to do that. You need someone to show up having a good understanding that maybe you're just correcting on the specifics of your business. But if you show up not getting what we do, it'd be like me selling into financial services because I don't understand financial services. I would have to do a ton of research to know where to start.
And what's amazing is I know we all experience this every day, and as does everyone listening. How many emails do you get from, I'm going to pick on the SDRs, but from an SDR that isn't even close to what you are, what you do, what you want, anything. And yet we're drowning in signals and what I'll characterize as intent data, which isn't always intent data, but there's plenty of information out there if you choose to take the time and figure it out about who your prospective buyers might be. And if you know who they might be, what it is they're looking to accomplish. The bad things shouldn't happen as often as they do, but unfortunately, here we are.
Yeah, absolutely. In the lucky world of financial services, right? And that to us looks like going and looking at the public investor documents because they're always saying what their top priorities are. So if you've never done that as an SE, highly recommend it. It can be huge for figuring out what your buyers care about to start with. I've got a question there, though. I've got a product marketing team, but I know SEs who have never worked with their product marketing team. So how do you see an SE and a product marketing team working best together? And to the SE that's never engaged product marketing, what should they do?
So the funny story, I forget how long ago, middle last year maybe, I did a poll on LinkedIn, kind of knowing the answer. But my poll was, do you think product marketers and SEs should be working more closely together? And 100% overwhelming answer is yes. Of course it is. And then I hear a statement like this, which is, gee, well, we really don't work all that well. I'm doing a poor imitation of your voice. But yeah, so I'm going to expand the world a little bit and say sales, because I think the answer is the same for product marketers collaborating with working with sellers. And then I'll put a finer point on it for the SEs as well. So we use the word value a lot. And I think that, the value can and should be a unifying underpinning element for how teams work together. And by the way, not just marketing and sales, but customer success as well, and product. So we can do a dissertation on that. And even, a task to do might be, and I've done this and I've done this successfully, is have a workshop where you, as a marketer or as an SE, or both together with your sales friends and whoever friends, walk through, hey, we want to go after these markets. What are the value drivers? What are the features we have that answer them? What's the proof we have that we can do it? All this kind of stuff. When you line that up, you now have a common forum of work and discussion. Now, putting a finer point on it and sticking with the notion of value, there are two areas in which product marketers and SEs can overlap. And it depends company to company whether, who's doing which. But creating financial or economic value models is one. So often somebody in pre-sales or something like a value engineering or value consulting team creates an Excel spreadsheet with formulas and models in it about here's the value that our thing delivers. Sometimes it's product marketers that do it, but more often it's in pre-sales. But both worlds need to come together on that, because at some point we've got to tell the story of that value, and the marketers and the product marketers that are doing that out into the world and typically enabling the sellers to do that. But pre-sales is often, as I said, creating the formulas, or maybe, hopefully using a platform that helps them do that. So that's one area of collaboration. Second is, these days, demos. I'm not denigrating SEs by saying, I don't intend to denigrate them by saying that the demo is typically the world of the SE, or the SE tends to be responsible for demonstrations. Now, we have technology that makes it easier to put a demo on your website, and we have technology that makes it easier for an SE to generate and change demos constantly. But they have to be consistent. And so that working together should be another element. I'm not saying that product marketers suddenly are going to go create all the demos that get done for salespeople. That's still going to be pre-sales. Pre-sales is still going to know more about individual accounts and how to customize and all of that. But the base substrates for these, I think, particularly in larger companies, should be agreed to and worked on, or at least exchanged collaboratively. And good news is we have tech that allows you to do that.
You said the demo word, so I've got to go deeper on that. One of my favorite parts about the job.
I went there.
How do you feel about those demos that everyone sees on the website? What does value look like there when you're kind of casting such a wide net?
I don't think I've seen, other than ChatGPT and so on, I don't think I've seen a technology that has such instant efficacy. Full disclosure, I'm a fanboy of the technology. And this is a guy, I used to have to go into the hex code of the software a billion years ago and change crap in binary to create a tailored demo. And I've used Camtasia and this kind of stuff. Anyway, the value of putting this on the website is, remember our buyers that want to do their own research and they don't want to spend time with you. They don't want to talk to a seller first, all of that. Well, the value of the demo on the website is time and working within the process that the buyer wants to work in. So in real life, forgetting about this technology for a second, somebody goes to your website and what do they see? Get a demo, schedule a demo, call sales. So first of all, they don't want to do that, but okay, they have to do it. You start trying to do that and it takes a week, it takes 2 weeks. Oh no, 2 people want to see it. Oh, we want to repeat it. So, a month has gone by, 2 months have gone by, and what have we accomplished? What this technology does is it lets you give a demo, or at least tell visually the story of what your product does. So you can consider it that buyer self-qualifies. So by virtue of looking at the demo on the website, or maybe you do it as part of a campaign and you send it to them in an email, but by virtue of them going through it, they're going to say, yeah, well, I see what this can do. It does solve what I want to solve. And now it kind of brings them along to the next step much more quickly. We're also finding that the website demos as an interactive piece of content convert better than anything, better than video of the same thing, better than, I can go on a rant about ROI calculators, but they convert better than other forms of content on the website. And last thing, and not so much, well, yeah, for the ones on the website and also the ones that you might send out as part of a campaign, they collect data. They're an amazing source of first-party data. And when you have more than one of them on your website, which is becoming more popular, you have data for every click that somebody stepped through in the demos and how many of them they looked at. So let's say you support 8 different use cases or 3 different roles or, something like that. You have those on your website and somebody walks through them. You now know what they're interested in, how far they got, all sorts of information that is gold to that next sales effort.
I mean, it's doing what we talked about towards the beginning of this conversation, which is showing up, knowing more about your customer specifically.
The warm conversation is the end result. You bet. Time and the ability to have a warmer conversation.
Getting back to our backpack analogy, if I know that Matthew spent 15 solid minutes looking through one type of 2-strapped backpack, then I'm not going to come in with the sling or, messenger bag variant when I'm having that conversation with. I'm going to leave that on the table, leave it behind. Not only can I have done my own research, but I can now see the research that they did and just combine that together. You're not wasting anyone's time, like you said.
You bet.
How do you make this practical as someone, especially most of us here probably in pre-sales, as someone who feels like they're brought in order to just do a demo every time? How do you start making that shift? What are some maybe 1 or 2 practical approaches you can start making today to start shifting more towards this value side of the equation?
In support of my SE brethren, like Matthew and others, the demo is one of 10 things that they have to do or like to do in your case. And I think peeling it back a little bit, or before I peel it back, there's a lot of discussion on LinkedIn and elsewhere now around, we've got the wrong name, maybe we should be solutions, somethings, that sort of stuff. And it's trying to connote both the breadth of the role and what it should be doing, but also the fact that it's not just about what happens before the sale, but what happens after the sale. But I think all of it comes back to, if I were to really simplify it, it comes back to trying to discern and then show and articulate the value of whatever that offering is on the way to the sale being done. So how is that done? It's done economically, it's done visually. I mean, who knows the context of a given account or accounts like it more than the SE does? Nobody. So I think, being able to leverage that expertise across the board and then carry that to the other side, as it were, and say, we're not just going to help get the thing done. We're going to make sure that, again, based on our expertise and experience with other clients, we're going to make sure that that customer onboards correctly, starts using the product correctly, and just make sure that adoption, usage, that sort of stuff begins well. And we have incredible experience with other accounts to go back on. So leveraging that, is easy to say. There are certainly platforms that help relate the valuable things that the SEs are doing to the deal flow and to the deals themselves. So just like, I think, marketers have a chip on their shoulder about being attached to revenue. SEs need to be attached to revenue too. They're closer to it, but because what they do is often so magical, it goes undocumented. So being able to demonstrate the effect on pipeline, on individual deals getting done, I think that's probably the best way to up the ante.
So David, anything you're specifically working on right now you wanted to speak about? And last but not least, how can people find you if they want to connect with you or follow you in some way?
So we talked a lot about on the way up to the sale. We didn't talk about afterwards. And the reason I bring it up is it's a topic very near and dear to my heart. I'm constantly talking, working on it. And so matching up the technical ways that you as vendors help your customers realize the value that they hope to get from their purchase is critically important. So, look out for posts and stuff like that, which actually leads me to how do people find me? Easiest way to find me is on LinkedIn. I'm addicted to it. I'm there more than I probably should be. Feel free to look me up, ping me. That's probably the easiest way to figure out where I am at any given time.
Excellent. Well, definitely, I'd say connect with David if you haven't yet. I've been following him now for a few months since we first chatted. And David, pleasure having you on the show. Thank you so much.
I appreciated it. I love the backpack discussion. I may go relook at my single and double strap tendencies, but thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to the PreSales Podcast. These shows are recorded live during our bi-weekly LinkedIn show called PreSales Live and include a listener Q&A after each recording. To find information on the live show, head to presalescollective.com/podcast. Follow the PreSales Collective page on LinkedIn or join the PreSales Collective Slack. We have a dedicated channel for the PreSales podcast where you can find more information and join in the conversation after the show. We'll see you next time.